Watching news at Prime, let's get into another important discussion. 6 witnesses have appeared before the Judicial Conduct Tribunal that's investigating allegations of sexual harassment against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. The High Court Secretary, Andy Swamengo, alleges that Mbenenge made unwanted sexual advances towards her between 2021 and 2022. Expert witnesses looked at WhatsApp communications that were used during the interactions between the two. Let's discuss this now and lots more, particularly the implications of this case on the judiciary. Mbenenge Benjamin joining us now. He is from the organization Judges Matter. Mr. Benjamin, good evening to you, and thank you as always for talking to us. And it is that particular word in that introduction that I want to quickly latch on to, the implications of this, even before the outcome of this Judicial Conduct Tribunal is pronounced on. If a whole judge president of a High Court division is dragged for something like this, what does it tell us about the state of that division and whether or not this judge may still have his integrity intact after a process such as this one?
Good evening, Mr. Ngambi, and good evening to the viewers. Well, the implications really are at this stage for him, right? We can't draw any conclusions while the tribunal is still ongoing. We also can't prejudge some of the evidence that has been led so far because there's still a full week of evidence that's to follow and a few more steps before we reach the conclusion. So at this stage, we can't decide that he's guilty or not guilty without having seen the full entirety of the evidence. But you're quite right in terms of asking what are the broader implications looking at someone in his position. Well, look, we don't expect our judges, any of our judges or magistrates for that matter, particularly leaders in the judiciary, we don't expect them to be in the wrong or out of line with the ethics that are set out for the judiciary, particularly because judges president play a very crucial role in terms of the judiciary, in terms of enforcing ethics against other judges. Section 15 of the JSC Act, the Judicial Service Commission Act, requires that judges president enforce the rules or the code of ethics against other judges. So ideally, you don't want a judge president to be implicated in any impropriety because they will be, at the end of the day, enforcing the rules against other people. So at this stage, we are worried, of course, that there are these serious allegations against the judge president, but we haven't reached any conclusion because the tribunal is still ongoing.
As mentioned right at the start of this discussion, Mr. Benjamin, the judge president, we can't say definitively at the moment whether he's guilty or not because the Judicial Conduct Tribunal, it continues. But there are issues that affect the actual work of the court itself, the administrators. An investigative piece by journalists has come out, and it's on the back of a letter of complaint that was written to that division, and that letter was leaked to the media, detailing some of what simply is corruption, pure corruption. The officials are said to be asking for monetary bribes in order for them to carry out duties that they are paid to do. What does that tell us about the state of the division of the High Court in the Eastern Cape that, of course, is under the stewardship of Judge Mbenenge?
Well, look, Toli, these are all very serious allegations. There's no doubt about them, and we demand that action be taken against them, right? There's no doubt about that. But we need to draw a careful line between what the Judicial Conduct Tribunal is busy investigating, which are allegations against the judge president and his conduct, right? And no doubt it has had an impact on the operations of the court, especially over the last 2 years, right? Because it's both the complainant and the respondent are people who work in the same court building. So no doubt it would put a strain on the colleagues working on that court building. So we shouldn't downplay that. But the allegations that have now been reported by the investigative journalists, those allegations pertain to administrators, and I don't think we can draw a line between the two, between the judge's president conduct and the conduct of the administrators, which is essentially something that is quite serious, that they're accepting and soliciting bribes for administrative work that they would have been required to do anyway. It's run-of-the-mill work of court administration. And we shouldn't also sometimes look at it as unique only in the Eastern Cape. In Gauteng, a couple of years ago, there was issues about the integrity of the court orders because there were allegations that court staff members in Gauteng were also soliciting bribes for that, and which is why Chief Justice Mogoeng at the time in 2018 instituted a project called the Court Integrity Project to ensure that these allegations are investigated, that the relevant officials are taken through a disciplinary process. And in fact, it was the impetus that drove Gauteng to adopt a court online system. So these are two very serious allegations, no doubt, but they operate in different universes at this time, if we can look at them this way.
And I'm glad that you're able to make that distinction, because for an ordinary member of the public, they will look at this and say, oh, the judge president faces such allegations, and then people that work under him, the administrators, are also self-destructing, if you like. What hope is there for members of the public who turn to the courts in order to have their issues resolved? And so if administrators, Mr. Benjamin, if administrators are doing something wrong, who is expected to call them to order? Who is expected to run a high court division? Is it a judge president, or is that left to the Justice Department?
So yes, that's an important question, because that speaks to how the governance system of the judiciary is, where part of the administrative functions are run by a national government department called the Office of the Chief Justice, which is a misnomer on its own. But the Office of the Chief Justice is an administrative department that is required to administer the superior courts. It does not necessarily fall under the responsibility of the judge president, even though he does have a level of oversight. But ordinarily, the Office of the Chief Justice will be the one responsible for taking action against administrators. In fact, 3 weeks ago, the Department of Justice fired over 54 court officials on allegations including theft, fraud, and corruption. So there is a clampdown within the administrative systems of government to clamp down against officials that are doing corruption. And this is separate from the judicial functions, where the judges and how they function, those 100% fall under the responsibility of the judge president. So to ask your question again, do people need to have faith in the Eastern Cape High Court, including in Mthatha, Bisho, Gqeberha, and East London? The answer is yes. I think at this stage, we do have a very good court system in the Eastern Cape. The judges are quite capable people. A lot of them have been appointed in the last 3 years and are lawyers who have made huge impact in the law. So I have no doubt in my mind that the judges in the Eastern Cape are still very credible people. And that gives me faith that that court functions, even though there are these concerns about the administrators and the corruption allegations and the allegations against the judge president. I think those things, we need to separate them out.
Yeah. When we sum up the conversation, therefore, looking at the administrative functions, and you've already detailed who is responsible and who has been firing people at that level of the court. That's the Department of Justice. That's fired people for essentially doing wrong things. And then you look at the conduct of judges and, for example, the judge president whose sexual conduct tribunal is ongoing at the moment. When you look at this in its entirety, what do you think members of the public are saying in terms of whether they still can have confidence in South Africa's criminal justice system if the people who work at these very courts, I mean, we sit there as ordinary people and think that judges are beyond reproach. These are people who can do no wrong, but they are human beings after all. So should we have confidence in the South African judicial system in its entirety?
The short answer is yes. We should still have confidence in our justice system, but we should be concerned and we should be vigilant at the extent at which there is accountability within the system, right? There are more than 250 judges in South Africa. There are about 5 judges who are undergoing disciplinary processes at the moment. So if you look at the numbers only, 250 versus 5, you can see that the vast majority of judges in South Africa are people of integrity, of honesty, diligence, and who are beyond reproach. And so what we should be insisting that the 5 that are currently undergoing disciplinary processes, those processes must be rigorous, they must be fair, they must be transparent, and they must move quickly to deal with them. Because if there are any allegations against a judge, that should be taken very seriously and very urgently. And this is something that we, as Judges Matter, have been calling for a number of years, that the Judicial Service Commission is taking far too long to deal with judges who don't follow the rules. And so what we are insisting on is that these processes must move faster, because the longer they take, unfortunately, they tend to taint the other judges in the system, and that's not fair. And so what we are saying is that the few that are currently implicated, they should be dealt with. And of course, like you said, judges are human beings. They are not gods who are beyond, who don't err sometimes. But when they do err and they don't follow the rules, those rules must be enforced and they must be held accountable.
Mbengenge Benjamin, thank you very much indeed for your time, a senior researcher at the organization Judges Matter.